Okay, everybody, today we're going to go over a comment that I got in by Rick. Rick is a longtime viewer and supporter of this channel, so thank you, Rick, for this excellent suggestion that you have made. Actually, there's 3 of them. So I'm going to go over this. This is his comment that he wrote. No joke. He literally spent this much time writing to me, all in the name of safety and worry about the things that I'm doing to be the safest, which I agree with. I'm going to start off right away. I agree with everything that he says in here. I'm going to now give my thoughts on why I didn't do it, which I think is important because we all have our own experiences with our horses, and plenty of my experiences are not online. You guys, you just don't see them. I can't post everything that I do. So yeah, so let's get started. This is on the video of when I took Mr. Wild out and about and I saddled him up. And so Rick's got some concerns. So I'm just gonna do a little reading. You guys can read along or just listen up. So he says, please understand I'm not posting this to say you were wrong or didn't know what you were doing. We both know there's reasons we worry about or not about certain things, as well as we both know you know what you're doing. Thank you, Rick. I feel like I do, but of course everybody makes mistakes, including me. Something I would have done a little different when Mr. Wild was worried on the grass patch when you were getting ready to saddle him. His head and focus was to his left at the 235 mark. What I would have worked on at this point, before moving forward, would have been to get his head either straight or towards you or the right. You can see his head was high, like you said, he seemed slightly adverse. If he spooked himself and decided to bolt, his hindquarters would have absolutely swung into you. Moments later, you got his attention back eating, but in my mind, it only takes a second for something to go sideways, like getting stepped on in sneakers, or worse, knocked over. I learned this when working with our, at the time, 2-year-old, after one of my former coaches pointed it out to me. I demonstrating the exact same thing to him the day I was dropping her off to start the next phase of her training. It made sense, and it stuck with me. So let's take a look at 2 minutes and 35 seconds in. So flicking to 2:19. He had escaped on me. If you're new here, this guy went to go get him and he kind of wandered off. So I just had to go retrieve him from the back. So coming up on 2:35 right about now. Okay, so here we are with the saddle. And I put the pad on and he's kind of facing towards me still. He's looking at me. He's now looking to his left a lot more. So put the saddle pad on again. He's still looking to his left quite a bit. He's kind of worried. He doesn't really have a right eye on me too much. So I ask him to just eat. You see he's still to his left. We're at the 3-minute mark. So he's pretty worried. He's got his head high. And I talk about this in the video as well, about how concerned he is. So let's just keep going just a little bit because I know what Rick's talking about. And like I said, I do agree with him, but I'm going to explain why I didn't do it. So we're getting ready to just launch this thing on. I've got his nose and his eye. His butt is moving away from me. And there he's checking his right-hand side and his left. And I have him moving around. Rick covers this little bit here in a second, which I also agree with, but I wasn't too worried. Anyway, so I think I've gone past the point where he says that I got to get his face towards me. So let's watch this one more time really quickly. So there he's got his head to the left looking at me. And I go to his other side and start messing around. And he's still got his head to the left. Okay, so this is actually, I agree with Rick that you more often than not, I'd say 95% of the time, you're going to want to have your horse looking at you when you're doing things, or at least straight, like he says. Now, to me, there's a more involved approach when it comes to getting horses used to things. Plus, of all the history that I have with him, I've saddled him quite a bit. I haven't done it in a while, which is why I wanted to get on with doing it. He's been ridden, so we've got that figured out. He is not a one-sided horse, although he is displaying a little bit of one-sided tendencies. The interesting thing is he's showing one-sidedness to his left, not his right, which is unusual. Most horses show more concern on their right-hand side. So the reason that we want our horses to be either looking at us or at least straight is, as Rick says, that the body of the horse goes where the nose goes. So if he wanted to bolt forward, there is a reasonably good chance, not absolute, so I disagree just a little bit in his comment. If he spooked himself and So right here, he's never going to spook himself. He'll be spooked based off, now I'm getting nitpicky, so just bear with me. Horses don't spook themselves. Some opinions out there, I know he probably wrote this in a way that was not meant to be this per se, but I hear this saying a lot. So I'm going to cover it. Horses get afraid mostly because of the stuff that we do, and something could just sort of trigger a twitch. Something could just be a little bit too much. A rope might touch in a different spot. Remember that horses have to handle more than one contact point. So if I've got a saddle pad on and a saddle and I'm touching my hand and suddenly the rope touches his chest, or I brush by his leg with my leg or something like that, that's another contact point. Those contact points can have a horse just lose it. They will never have expected it. They think that something's jumping on them or doing something to them, and in turn they have to move. It's normal. And decided to bolt. His hindquarters would have absolutely swung into you. I'm not in a full agreement with the absolute. I think that there's a good chance, very good chance, because the horse's, come back to the video, the horse's nose is going to lead the horse's body. So if he were to, if we play this for a second, right here, if he were to kind of zip forward, there is a reasonably good chance that he's going to go left, although I am on this side of him and have the halter ready to pull or remind him that he needs to not do that. And I'm at his shoulder here. So I don't feel sometimes the camera may not show a perfect angle of where I'm at. And when I'm doing this kind of thing, I'll generally be somewhere near the shoulder. If I see forward movement, you can actually touch a horse, which will swing their head towards you and to have their intention. Not always, but there's a lot of times that you can. My experience tells me that stuff. And so it wouldn't have really occurred to me to do what Rick is suggesting with my experience with him where I'm at. The other thing that I think about an awful lot is two-sided or one-sided horses that I want to be two-sided. And so a lot of times when I am saddling and a horse is a little bit worried, I'll let them look to the other side so that they can check that out. If they look like they're about to bolt, if they're standing so stiff, I definitely won't be going forward. He's got his head high and he's a little bit worried. But you can see that it doesn't take much to have him just eat. Being aware of that, knowing that he's my horse, the time that I've spent with him, the things that I've seen him do, those instincts come a little bit easier than to those that may not have that with him. I've seen some pretty twitchy horses though, and I've worked with some that are just outright plain simply dangerous, and this just wasn't it. I'm also using my voice an awful lot with him, and I can tell that he is handling things okay. Okay, so let's get to Rick's second point before I go any further in this, because I'm doing the thing that he's talking about. So he says, my OCD... also, I am wearing sneakers. It's totally true. I'm wearing some very old sneakers at that. I'm wearing some very old running sneakers at that. Running sneakers are useless. They're made of cloth. You might as well just put on a heavy sock or something. It's true, but I haven't been stepped on in years, so I'm pretty good at that stuff. Not to say that it can't. Sometimes we have to be cautious whether or not our trauma is going to affect our horse training. So I would likely never carry another person's trauma. I understand that there's a lot of chances that I take, and there's more chances that I take that I don't show on video because it doesn't exhibit good safety practices that I would like to show everybody. Getting stepped on hurts, and it can hurt for a while, but I can't remember the last time I was stepped on. It's got to be at least a year. But when it does, it hurts for about a week. I think it was from trimming, though. I think that time it was trimming. So anyways, okay, let's get on to the next paragraph here. My OCD was pegged at 10 with the saddle pad and saddle placement at the 330 mark. Not mine. Not mine, obviously. I was fine. I was totally fine with this. I actually am totally fine with saddles falling off of horses. I enjoy it. Enjoy it. I think it's a good thing. I'm always ready to be able to get out of the way. And then I put it in time-lapse mode because this is incredibly boring, and for the most part, in my opinion. So let's continue on with that. Actually, let's just look at this for a second. Just a moment. It's caught my eye. So I asked for his attention, and you can kind of see how his front legs are a little bit forward. He's a little bit braced. That's not ideal. So playing around with his stuff right here, he comes to check me out and then has another bite to eat. Tells me that he's bringing himself down. But his head does come up pretty quick. He's a jack in the box. We want to be cautious of that. So a little bit more movement. You can tell I'm not quite as comfortable as I'd like to be. But I am okay with the saddle falling off. It's an old saddle. I think I paid $700 for this saddle years and years ago. It's a good saddle. Heavy. I don't like Western saddles very much. Okay, so my thought process, set the pad and the saddle up in the proper place on the horse every time and all the time, especially with young, fresh, or not so newly trained horses. Well, I couldn't agree with this. I think that if I can't mess around with it, if I can't put it on and take it off and jiggle it around and move it around, then my previous work wasn't done. And in such a case, I would go back to whatever it was I was supposed to be doing before, because I should be able to just casually chuck a saddle on, shuffle it around, throw it around, and they should not lose their mind. I recently did a video on picking up poop on trails. It's got mixed reviews, pretty polarizing topic. But one of the things was people said they're never going to do it because, actually, I think even Rick commented on it as well. He says, well, some horses freak out when you go to mount them in an unusual location or something like that. And I just thought, no, that also is something that should have been caught long before you go out on a trail ride. You should be able to hop off at any point in the arena, any point on a little pathway on the property, and just get back on. And if there is any problem on either side of the horse, you do not belong in the public whatsoever. It's just lack of training. So this is the same case. So something out of place on their back or putting just a little pressure in the wrong place can cause an undesirable outcome. If I have a horse that is like this, they wouldn't even be out of a fenced-in area. I've already caught this. An undesirable outcome generally means bucking or bolting or getting out of my hands. To me, that would be irresponsibility on my part to bring that horse out of a fenced area and a safe area to the public, which is where I'll be going. He was already worried his head and focus were more away from you than with you. And if that saddle slid off his back, it most likely would have triggered an undesirable response. I love these undesirable response things. I actually don't mind a horse getting really worried about saddles falling off. In fact, if they do, I'll do it till they don't. So I kind of almost think that it would have been better if it did fall off so that I could show you what I would do. Now I would get them past it. Reassuring horses, like when you have a problem and you spend the time to reassure them and calm them and set them straight, essentially just say, hey, there's nothing to worry about here. You do nothing but build your relationship. So I look forward to those relationship building opportunities. So undesirable outcome isn't for me. Any outcome is good, unless I get hurt or the horse gets hurt. Outside of that, every outcome is desirable for me. Which brings me to walking with a saddle on a horse's back not cinched at that phase of the training. I think Rick might be confused at which phase of the training that I'm at. For me, I don't have a problem with this. I actually don't mind it falling off, as I've already said. He was already worried his head and focus were more away with, and that saddle slid off his back, undesirable response. Not that I'm saying I want to bubble wrap my horses. I don't, but I do want to set them up for something that's in my control that may freak them out. I can tell you that I've had the saddle fall off his back a lot already. If it did fall off, he might sidestep away. In fact, we should probably do that in a future video. I'll show you what happens, rather than me just say it. But I do not want to set them up for something that's in my control that may freak them out. Having the saddle and pad in the proper place in his back, along with being at the very least snugly cinched, would have been my approach. Yep. But unfortunately, I had to get to the other side of the horse, and he was already kind of worried. So because I don't mind a saddle falling off, this is not an expensive saddle, sure. But if I'm training, I'm not going to use a saddle that, plus I'm on the grass. It's no big deal. It's not his approach. It's cool. I'm totally cool with somebody else doing a completely different approach. Also, if I felt the need to walk with them something on their back, would have just started with a pad to desensitize them. I'm not a fan of the word desensitize. I'm much, much, much more prone to use the word acclimate. I want to acclimate my horses. I want them to be very sensitive to everything. I don't want them to have a lack of sensitivity. I want them to be sensitive to it all. Before putting a heavy Western saddle on them. Yeah. I think the suggestions that Rick is making are fantastic. They're good. They're good for most people. Maybe all people. Maybe just not me. But that's only because I have a different thought process in my mind of what I consider an undesirable or desirable outcome. I would have no problem with this saddle falling off of him. I would have no problem trying to fix it. I would think it is just nothing but a good opportunity to continue to build a relationship. Because when I put it back on his back for even the 20th time, each time I work through a little bit of his fear, rather than making sure to set things up to be as clean and clear as possible. It should be muddy. In a lot of my training is muddy, I think, probably the best way to put it. Last thing, actually, is something that I don't really think about myself, but if we wander over just a little bit into the video, after saddling him, wandering around a little bit, I put him in the trailer, and right here, so during this time in the trailer, Rick feels that there's a possibility he could get his mouth caught. So let's read that. We've had this discussion in the past about stirrups and how a horse can get in trouble with them. And they reach around to their back and they catch their teeth on them. And it's a high risk. It's not a high risk, but it's still there. Some horses will throw their head around to get a fly on their flank or something like that. And this is an interesting problem. I've never experienced, I don't know anybody else that has experienced. And the idea is to tie the stirrups up together with bell boots, and this ensures they will not get hung up. Well, the first thing is I don't own a pair of bell boots. I know exactly why bell boots are used. So maybe a piece of twine or something like that, tie them up. I don't think it's a bad suggestion whatsoever. I think it's a good suggestion. If somebody has experienced a horse with their head coming around, biting at a stirrup, somehow getting their mouth stuck in there, then all the power to you. Tie those things up and solve that. And take the worry probably more out of the human than the situation ever happening. I think it's a very unusual situation. That said, though, it is a good suggestion, and I think that I could probably do something like that. No harm done, no real extra effort. Really just put the stirrups up, put a little wrap around them, and then they just stay up top while you trailer, which is good. Just in case anybody's wondering, Rick is an absolutely fantastic person. He has made many suggestions and comments and compliments here on this channel to me directly. We've talked in the past, and it's been nothing but good experiences. So he does follow up. He says, this is not a post to say you are wrong or point out flaws. Sharing my training thoughts with the video. Maybe this will give someone a little more to think about it than just starting out with horses or training the first one. 100%. Yes, that's what I mean, though. So I think that for anybody who is starting out, everybody who is watching new, these suggestions are all fantastic. These are all very good to use. Also, things that you don't want to follow that I'm doing is wearing running shoes, especially old running shoes that are literally cloth. It does take a lot of time to work with horses, work with one particular horse kind of idea, understand how you need to move your body, understand how to read the horse so that you don't get hurt, you don't get knocked over, you don't get stepped on. Because it happens. I have been knocked over probably, I guess, 2 or 3 times. I've been stepped on at least 5, 6 times or so that I can kind of think of. And sort of knocked into and bashed into, not knocked over, but sort of, a horse will just come into me. And it's really jarring and it's worrying. It's scary. Being able to read the horses sooner rather than later can be incredibly beneficial. So a lot of my experiences that I'm showing are from the time that I have spent with him, whether or not I'm going to saddle in a way that I would saddle a horse I don't really know, whether I'm going to saddle or not saddle or acclimate them to what I'm doing more or less based on, it's not going to be the same as this guy. I know this guy, he knows me. We've got a great relationship, and that takes time. That's a time thing. And so we do a lot of talking, him and I, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that's been a little bit interesting. I'm going to do a few more videos from some other comments. So if you guys ever have any comments here, questions, worries, concerns, things that you're thinking about that you think, hey, what about this thing? Or what did you do there? Or why did you do that? Or that doesn't seem safe. Constructive, good feedback is always welcome. Insults, name calling, straight out, just pure criticism, you've probably been banned by now. I have absolutely no problem banning people on this channel. In fact, I'm happy to ban people that don't have manners when they come to my house, essentially, which is the channel. So that's it for this one. I will see you guys in the next one.